Death, famine, and the collapse of civilization. Though bleak, we love consuming apocalyptic media. There's seemingly a steady stream of new pieces of work revolving around the end of the world that comes out almost every year, whether it be TV shows or movies. So, what's with the obsession, and what does this reveal about human nature? Well, we'll be answering all of those questions and more. Also, welcome if you are new here. My name is Malaya, and let's get on with today's video topic. Growing up religiously, my sisters and I were made to go to CCD, or better known as Sunday school. In my case, it was actually on Saturdays at 9 a.m. And let's just say waking up that early as a kid wasn't the best way to start off your weekend. But I bring all of this up because the apocalyptic genre has its traces within a lot of religious stories. Texts from Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Zoroastrianism, which is one of the oldest religions in existence, include themes of a final judgment by a savior or a figure, along with this idea of destruction and renewal. I remember in my CCD classes, there were always two stories that piqued my interest that came from the book of Exodus, and it was the story of the 10 plagues of Egypt and the parting of the Red Sea. The apocalyptic elements were well and present in these stories, where it felt as if God's wrath was coming down on the world. Tales where humanity strayed so far away from faith that they were going to suffer the consequences of it. And in many apocalyptic forms of media, religious undertones make subtle appearances in their works. For instance, in The Walking Dead, Rick wakes up in a new world full of zombies. Suddenly, he's exposed to the downfall of society, and as we can see in the first season, he stumbles upon this man who shot himself, along with a woman lying nearby who also appears to have been shot herself. Near the man, the phrase, "God forgive us," is written in blood on the wall. This exact scene reveals the essence of divine punishment. This idea that an all-powerful being out there has decided to take it upon themselves to punish the wickedness of humanity. A moral reckoning had arrived, and it wasn't going to spare just about anybody. In a show like The Walking Dead, we see their characters have quiet moments of faith, whether it be amongst themselves or outwardly expressed for everyone to see. In season 2, Glenn is praying alone until he's interrupted by Maggie. He admits that this was his first ever time praying, and that he felt some sort of comfort knowing that his friends needed this prayer to make sure that they were safe.
You think God exists?
Everything that's happened, there must have been a lot of praying going on, and seems quite a few went unanswered.
Among many of the scenes within the show, we can see how religion becomes something very personal to each character as they have to grapple with the fact that this is the new reality that they're living in. In the season 2 finale, we see this interaction with Rick and Herschel.
Man of God, have some faith.
And in response, Herschel says this very powerful statement in a moment where he truly begins to question his faith.
I can't profess to understand God's plan. Christ promised a resurrection of the dead. I just thought he had something a little different in mind.
Though religious institutions crumble like the rest of society, the faith still remains, though it does waver in times of hardship. It is also comforting trying to rationalize that there is some sort of order amidst all the chaos. There's some sort of grand purpose in all this, and that humanity has hit some sort of peak. It also fulfills this arc that we assign stories where there's this beginning, middle, and end, and that there is a promise for new beginnings and a renewal for humanity. We can see that this is the case in the religious cult, the Seraphites, aka the Scars, in the Last of Us franchise. Founded by an unnamed woman known as the Prophet, she was a doomsday prepper who had kept her community alive in the Lower Ann neighborhood for several months after the infection broke out. Whilst alive, she was known to persuade her people through the sermons of how the cordyceps braid infection was a punishment brought forth from humanity's sins. She proclaimed that these events are a second chance for human redemption. The formation of this new religion reveals the innate desire for a sense of belonging. They are a tight-knit, primitive group that have reverted back to simpler ways of living, as we can see with the way that they have reconnected with the natural elements. Although the death of their prophet pushed the Scars to become a bit of a religious extremist group, we can also see the way that religion can be weaponized to push a further agenda against non-believers. The apocalyptic genre comes out in many forms, whether that be through natural disaster or alien takeover, but perhaps the most popular has to be the zombie genre. The modern zombie, as we know it today, wasn't always this way. These ghoulish cannibals actually stem from Haitian voodoo. Bokers, which are Haitian voodoo sorcerers, had the power to create these reanimated corpses to become their slaves to perform labor for them. Using potions and antidotes, the superstition of the zombie became a source of fear amongst the Haitian people, believing death would be a final release from a life of slavery. To be brought back in the afterlife as a new form of slave was the ultimate horror. Though George A. Romero's 1968 film, The Night of the Living Dead, can be credited as one of the main sources of inspiration for a lot of the zombie films that came after it, there was actually a zombie film that came before it. Victor Halperin's 1932 film, White Zombie, is a truer depiction of the voodoo zombie. Set in Haiti, the story follows Madeline, a white woman turned into a zombie by the antagonistic voodoo master Legendre. This villain even had its very own sugar cane mill operated entirely by his band of zombies. Following this movie, there would be more zombie-like movies referencing its link to the voodoo religion. However, Romero's depiction of the zombie was a completely new twist for the genre. For starters, the word zombie was never directly used to describe these creatures in his film. His quote-unquote ghouls, as he referred to them, would require no religious rituals for them to be created. Instead, one zombiness was acquired once one makes contact with another zombie and is ultimately bit by them. Filmed with a cast of relatively unknown actors and a low budget, the film grew a massive cult following. Despite the already saturated space of the zombie subgenre, demand never ceases to fail. Korean media also has followed suit, as they have their own depiction of the undead with works such as The Kingdom, All of Us Are Dead, and most popular, Train to Busan. And with the highly anticipated summer release of the film 28 years later, we are just simply eating up this genre just as much as zombies love to eat our brains. Am I right? Speaking of our fascination with the end of times, do you guys remember when we were supposed to die in 2012? Because I sure do. The release of the 2012 movie by Roland Emmerich in the year 2009 was diabolical timing if I've ever seen one. It came at the most perfect time where they could capitalize off of our growing anxieties about the supposed Mayan calendar prediction that the world would end on December 21st, 2012. And we reacted just like any normal civilization would. People were building bunkers, stockpiling supplies, and there were literal countdown clocks on websites tracking the days until our supposed doom. Social media was bombarded with tons of memes and theories about how exactly we were all going to die. Though deep down, I think most of us knew that we likely weren't going to die, but there was this collective excitement in the air as we were counting down the days. It also brought out this weird shared sense of anxiety that most of us likely felt. Then of course come the actual day itself, and nothing happened, but I think we all felt a sense of disappointment and a sigh of relief knowing that the world wasn't going to end just quite yet. We simply went about our days like normal after that, but a sensation like this definitely reveals our complicated relationship we have with apocalyptic scenarios. It's like we're simultaneously terrified of the possibility that the apocalypse is going to come in our lifetime, but also somehow drawn to it. So it just makes you wonder, what is it with the apocalyptic allure? There's nothing quite like the end of the world that brings people to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. One of the reasons why I believe we love consuming apocalyptic media is that we see scenarios in which humanity has to be brought together to fight against a common cause. It's like everybody's political and personal beliefs are suddenly thrown out the window because there's simply no time for these frivolous arguments because everyone is just trying to survive. And a lot of natural disaster films, there's always that one smart scientist that discovers humanity is basically screwed, namely because of the environmental damages that are now irreversible. And of course, when these scientists get a hold of the government, surprise, surprise, no one believes them. And it's only until the characters are at a very crucial point in the story that preventative measures start to be made. This is most apparent in the movie Don't Look Up, where much of the movie centers around how everybody is dismissing the fact that the end of the world is coming. However, the very last scene of the movie is perhaps the most endearing part of it all. With their very last moments together, Dr. Randall and Kate, along with their group of friends, enjoy what is almost like a last supper of sorts. They all attempt to remain like everything is normal while everything around them is crumbling before their very eyes, with their lives ending in a matter of seconds. For media involving plagues, efforts to find cures are made. These cures represent a beacon of hope to hopefully reverse the effects of the plague that has come down onto civilization. Though the apocalyptic genre can definitely reveal the better parts of humanity as we attempt to maintain a strong foothold in order to fight for the survival of our species, this concept is only able to last just a little bit until we start killing each other again. As humans start to adapt to their new conditions, we start to form little pockets of civilizations, and when the threat of another organized group comes to play, then who cares about the virus and the zombies? Because then we just start war all over again. We see this best demonstrated in The Last of Us with the ongoing war between the WLF and the Scars. Though short-lived, apocalyptic media definitely demonstrates the way that humans naturally want to form alliances with other people, as there truly is strength in numbers. The second reason why we're drawn to apocalyptic media is this romanticized idea of living a simpler life. As much as we complain about how hard our conditions are in the current state of the world, if we were to truly compare how life was for humans hundreds of years ago, we honestly have it way better than they did. Despite living in this easy mode, for some people, this way of living just isn't that simple. Many of us may wake up in the morning stressed about things such as mortgage payments, student loans, credit card debt, taxes, but conveniency is literally at our fingertips. But with this technological advancement, it has made our mental health worse for it. But in apocalyptic scenarios, all of that simply vanishes. Suddenly, your biggest concern isn't about whether or not you can afford this month's rent, but whether you can find clean water and shelter for the night. For some people, there might be something oddly liberating about that level of simplicity, although it is a bit terrifying to think about. This is best demonstrated in a scene in The Walking Dead when the ladies are washing their clothes in the river. They joke about the days when they had washing machines and dryers, but there's also this underlying appreciation for the simplicity of their current task. There's no electricity bills to worry about, and no worry as to whether or not you can keep up with the Joneses with the latest gadgets. This idea also ties into why a show like Doomsday Preppers is so fascinating to watch. These people have this "I know something you don't" mentality.
I know something you don't know.
Preparing for when society inevitably crumbles. But what they're really preparing for is a return to basics, growing their own food, purifying their water, and making their own tools. It's almost like these people are longing for a time where life felt like it had clearer priorities. There's no existential dread over your career path or whether or not you're living up to society's expectations of how you should live. In an apocalyptic world, you're either alive or you're dead. And that clear-cut black and white line can feel refreshing as opposed to the more grayer areas of modern day living. It strips away all the noise where the things that matter are at the forefront, and that's survival, community, and basic human connection. We focus more on the camaraderie, the clear sense of purpose, and the idea that life is way more precious now because every day we're fighting to stay alive for it. The third and perhaps the most obvious reason we love consuming apocalyptic media is the fantasy and escapism of it all. Video games like The Last of Us are a great example of this. Here's a world full of gore and violence where you can unleash all that pent-up anger and frustration from your daily life. You get to bash in zombie heads with makeshift weapons, and you get to feel like a total badass because of it.
You remember me? Yeah. You remember me.
But more than that, these scenarios let us craft up new identities we may want for ourselves. In the real world, you might have some dead-end desk job, but in the apocalypse, well, you could be the leader of your survival group or the medic that everyone depends on. It's the ultimate what-if scenario. What if all hell broke loose? How quick are you on your feet, and will you be able to adapt? Plus, there's this weird sense of superiority we get when we watch characters make the worst decisions ever. In the comfort of our homes, snuggled up in our blankets, we have the power to judge characters when we think they make awful choices. In our heads, we concoct up this idea that we'd obviously make the better decisions. The apocalypse also offers up this fresh start fantasy. Maybe your life feels stagnant right now, and a part of you is longing for some serious change in your life. However, it may feel like you can't change unless you're put in an environment where you're forced to adapt and change into a completely new person. The post-apocalyptic world can offer you just that. Everyone starts from zero, and you too can begin anew. So there you have it. Our obsession with the apocalypse isn't just all about the chaos of it all, but it's so much more than that. It's renewal and destruction, human unity, the appeal of the simple life, and the fantasy of it all. Apocalyptic media is powerful in the way that it speaks to some of our most fundamental human desires. Stories like this serve as a testament for the survival of humankind, because no matter how hard things get, we have an incredible ability to adapt, survive, and find meaning even in the darkest of times. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you for being here, and thank you for all of your lovely comments supporting me. I'm so glad that I started this YouTube channel again, but to think that we're making a community brings my heart so much joy. Okay, I'll stop being sappy because I have a bad habit of doing that. Bye, cool cats.